Hi everyone, so glad to have you join us today on this brown bag series. Well, it's a lunch and learn session, so please make yourselves comfortable as you learn along. And we'll just wait for a couple of seconds for more people to sign in before we begin. Great, I think we're ready to begin. Good afternoon and welcome to What I Need series for executives, brought to you by HeadHunt in partnership with Workforce Singapore. Broadcasting live here in LLI, we have with us Assistant Professor John Lim from Singapore Institute of Technology, and his sharing will be on Design Your Future. Thereafter, we'll have Raphael, who will give an overview on WSG programs for Singaporeans. Please note that there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, so please feel free to type in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll also be conducting our feedback poll right at the end, so please stay with us. Without further ado, I'll now pass the time to Prof. John.
Thank you very much, Tammy. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you so much, HeadHunt, as well as Workforce Singapore, for organizing this session. So let me begin real quick. As you have seen in the title of the slides is Design Your Future, but I took the liberty to add in an extra plural noun, so that would be the S. Yeah. And yep, there you go. That's the title, and let me begin. So Design Your Future. As you can see, there is no singular future out there to be predicted. So as a futurist and practicing design thinking consultant and educator, I don't believe that we are able to see in the crystal ball and just determine the future in a very limited and prescriptive manner. But there are many alternative futures to be anticipated and pre-experienced to some extent or some degree. So says the world-famous Jim Data, futurist, formerly from the University of Hawaii. I'd like to introduce myself a little bit. My name is John Lim, and I'm an associate professor here at the Singapore Institute of Technology and the Deputy Cluster Director as well. I have several other roles that I play as Chief Design Officer of Singapore Productivity Center and a founder of the Singapore chapter of the Speculative Futures International Network. I'm also currently the adjunct senior research scientist at the Rehabilitation Research Institute of Singapore. So as you can see, I'm pretty broad. I'm trained in architecture, and in my experience of working in architecture, I had the privilege to work for Frank Gehry, and it was quite amazing because if you look at a building like this, the Disney Concert Hall, you'll say, oh, that's crazy, how can it be done? But really, if there is disciplined creativity in architecture, why not in designing scenarios and building worlds that you want to enter? So I didn't work on that particular project, but I worked on this one with Frank Gehry at the Opus condo in the mid-levels of Hong Kong. And the question there is, do columns have to be straight, vertically extruded? Actually, the answer is no. It can be slanted, and as long as it transfers the load, it can work. So why did I bring up this example? It's because you can be creative and disciplined and yet question the norms at all times. So I was trained in architecture and I just want to do art for art's sake at one point, but while I was doing my doctoral studies at Harvard University in science fiction design, I chanced upon this Facebook challenge by MIT Sloan, and I won the challenge and got into the business school as well. And then I understood that in the world of business, as well as design, architecture, or even scenario planning, really it encompasses that same level of disciplined creativity that I'm talking about. So that's what I hope you'll pick up today in how you design your future. I did my research, as mentioned, in science fiction design, and I'd like to start with part one. And this is, how do you design a future? And so you must begin with desiring a future, then drawing a future, and then drafting a future. And that desire has to come from you. So if you're able to use the chat in some ways, the Q&A or chat function, I have some questions that I want to ask you so that you understand your own desire of the future and your particular future, perhaps. So let me begin with the warm-up activity. And if you're ready, please key in into the chat or the Q&A a series of numbers. So I have 4 questions for you. 1, do you think that technology is bringing us closer or pushing us apart more? So if you push, you can use the chat, the webinar chat, So if you think that technology is going to bring us closer in the future, you can type a 0. If you think it's going to push us further apart, really far apart till we've lost what it means to be human, put a 10, Yeah, so let's see. So we have some 0s, some 3s. So, I saw a 9, some 7. If you look at it, I want you to remember your score because there's a lot going on, but take this time, think about the future a little bit. Or what does technology mean in the future? Of course, the future encompasses more than just technology. There's the economic, the political, the environmental, and the societal forces. But just take a look at this question and think about where you yourself are positioned vis-a-vis the future. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, so you can see the range of answers. And let's go to the next question. Let's be a bit more specific. In the next 10 years, do you see that the world is getting better? That's 0. Or you think it's getting worse? And again, there's no right or wrong answer, but I just want you to start examining what you see or desire of the future. So I see a series of numbers, a lot getting worse. Some just ruin the word worse. That's funny. Yeah, so you can see the general sensing now seems to be a little darker, and that's partly because maybe we are in a recession or we're just coming out of COVID. So there seems to be a majority of, dystopic view of the future. So the third question is more personal, and that's why I asked if it's your desire. Are you able to personally affect or not affect? So do you have agency? Can you affect it? Yes, then there'll be a 0. Maybe you don't affect the whole future, but some future. But if you say, no, I'm really just going in the tides and the waves of time, that would be a 10. So yeah, please use the webinar chat. I realized that I asked for the Q&A bit, so confusing for you guys. But yeah, so let's look at the webinar chat and look at everyone's responses, and quite a lot in the middle. Not sure if you have the agency. Some say yes, more agency. Some say maybe less. Yeah. Again, please remember your own score and your own numbers, kind of just to dig out what your own desire is in terms of the future and how you can personally affect it. The last question, though, is you will personally be largely unchanged physically or digitally or hybrid, whatever you are in a physical way, or you'll be drastically different. You'll have AI as your servant in a sense. You have an avatar doing the learning for you. Yeah, so okay, a lot of high scores. I see one that's below 5, but majority thinking that yes, will be drastically different, and yet, yeah, and some less so, but you can see largely very different. So we're talking about a future that may be a little more gloomy in general among the participants in this room or this webinar, and yet there is this chance that we will be different. So that's very interesting. And there is some agency, I think it was quite split for that one, that you can affect the future or maybe less so. And if you look at all the answers that came out, again, no right or wrong, but it's very important that for yourself, if you're going to look at designing your future, a future or multiple futures, you need to be able to see where you stand and where you feel the future might go and where you think it might be. And that might change over time. But it's good to start taking stock about your desire of the future. So the first insight I want you to pick up, and don't worry, I'll be summarizing all the main insights in a while, is how you feel about the future actually affects how you design a future. You see what I'm saying? If you're having a very dystopic view and yet with agency, that means, or dystopic view in terms of like, the future will be very bad and all, but in many ways, but you have agency, so you are a more active member. If you feel that the future will be great, but then you're a very passive member, you have less agency, then that will change the way you design a future. And so that's desiring a future. And let's look at how we draw a future or draw out a future, literally from how the film industry has been doing it for years. Of course, you've been noticing on the content slide that the Jetsons here have appeared only for a very short series of time from 1962 to 63 and 1985 to 87. But if you notice all the typologies there, and which is like so long ago, they are things that we see today. Video call, like what we're doing right now, online classes, not very different, home office, which I'm sure some of you experience, and even telemedicine that's becoming more and more popular. So let's look at then, how do these ideas even come out into representational form? So looking at how concept artists in Hollywood come out of these works. So Christian Lawrence Schauer here, just matte painting this, you'll see that a lot of this work can be done with Midjourney and AI, but highly referencing these concept design work with very distinct background, foreground, middle ground compositions. And this by Mark Gerner, looking at something that kind of looks like our gardens by the bay on the inside, an air-conditioned area that's very lush and verdant. But remember, before you can use Midjourney and AI and all that, you need to have the content. Someone was just telling me if the latest job is AI prompt engineers, and that's going for like 300,000 a year USD as a job. And that's because they need more of these, not so much hard coders, but prompt engineers. And you know who are some of the best prompt engineers? English majors. So that's quite interesting, right? And if you had that story, that scenario, then you are able to come up with these images rather quickly as a sketch, as a draft. But as I mentioned about the content and scenarios, Mark Gerner has also thought about whether, what would Rome look like if it had steel technology? Very much like how steampunk is a whole genre of sci-fi that thinks about the world in light of steam technology instead of the combustion engine. And we are looking now at things that maybe if there was a global sea water rising, and will we turn a lot of our technologies into water energy generators in that sense. But in the past, and not too long ago, in 1952 onwards, you see that there's a lot of these explorations about living in outer space. But I just want to check very quickly. What do you can type in the chat? What do you think is the number one problem for astronauts after they return to Earth? What do you guys think? Anybody in the chat? What happens to astronauts when they come back from being in space very long? What happens to their body? Yeah, their bone density decreases. Their muscles get weaker because there's no gravity. Thank you so much for the answer. Yeah, they can't float, but their bodies definitely, the bone density gets lesser and their muscles too. So these designs, and many of these, as you can see, are ones that are simulating the gravity with a torus project, like a spinning kind of world, with the sense that if you live in space, your body and muscles will still be intact because you have this gravity to a certain ground, even though it's not the Earth spherically, but it's almost concave as a donut in that sense. It's going around, as you can see in some of these illustrations by Sid Mead, John Berkey, and Ralph McQuarrie. And if you look at, that's like the exploration of space. But if you look at 1927, where there are a lot of questions in the post-industrialization age, where what does it mean to be a city? What does it mean to be a worker in the city? Are you a gear? Are you just another piece of the machinery? What buildings have planes flying through them? Maybe something we'll see sooner, right? Now that we've seen Dubai launch their first air taxis and all. But the age-old question is still, what does it mean to be human in these kind of scenarios? Does downloading your consciousness and AI make you live on forever? And that's kind of where these are. The question again about society. Does it mean we are going to be just another worker, faceless worker that's going to work? Or amidst this giant metropolis, which was done by hand here, what was the story behind it? The set was done by hand. What's the story? What is the scenario that they're seeing? Is it one where social class distinction is very big between like those who can download their consciousness and to those that are just worker bees? More concept artwork by Eric Kittelhart. And yes, you can see in some of these drawings on the upper right, those who have can exercise and enjoy the tracks, while those who are the have-nots are just your faceless workers. Is this the future that we're headed towards? 1927, questions asked in Metropolis. Then if you look at Sid Mead's designs, at first he was supposed to just design the spinner vehicle, but I think when he became really good at it, the director actually asked him, and he was very good at it, and he included like images of the context. Then the director, and this is some of his sketches, when the director noticed all these environments and work, he asked Sid Mead to design the entire set. So in this particular illustration, for example, the late Sid Mead had like holographic projections at the upper left-hand corner, and you see the screens are very ubiquitous, but in 82, that wasn't as common. And now you see all over Singapore, you have those target media boards, or you see like a lot of animated billboards. And that's because these ideas begin to take shape and technology gets used at different scales. And people expect different things. So what's it like to shop there for human augmentation parts? Which is why I asked you the question, will we be changing more? Will you have a like knee replacement, bionic knee, or whatever else, and beyond that as well? All these sketches and thoughts all begins with a question and a desire. What kind of future do you want? And in this movie set, this was the kind of environment they thought might happen. You should watch the movie if you haven't. I'm not going to steal its thunder, but I think it's such a thoughtful movie that it begins to raise questions about what kind of future we want. And even if the future doesn't look like this, it's okay. At least we know one plausible scenario. Another movie, which is the Minority Report, was done in a very different way, where instead of a movie script, they actually had a group of think tank experts that joined a think tank. Alex McDowell, production designer, the late William Mitchell, another gentleman whom I've met, who was the head of MIT architecture as well as the Media Lab, and then who helped found the Media Lab, and John Underkoffler and other scientists that came in, and they imagined the future of what will happen if they stretch the technology, and a world was then made. And then a movie script was written. So it was a very interesting process. This is Washington, DC, as you can see, and very different Washington, DC, with maybe at this time, maybe carbon fiber being used more in the construction, and vehicles not just going on the ground, but over and to the side of buildings, like sliding up and down. And that's like Tom Cruise jumping off for dear life onto that ledge, and then him hanging onto dear life onto one of these vehicles going up. So again, by the way, this artwork is done by Mark Gerner, a concept artist and designer whom I really respect, and I had a chance to work with on some of his projects. And so I thought if you see more of his work, you see he doesn't just design the worlds, he also designs the products and the items that are there. And so if you're designing that world, you almost have to draw out that world by using some form of design, however rudimentary, however simple it might look. And this is John Underkoffler. When the movie first came out, I noticed his hands are wearing gloves, and he would do something like this in the movie. As you can see, like sweeping the scenes, like what Tom Cruise did, as his character did in the movie. But they found out very soon that his arms got tired very quickly. And when interviewed, John Underkoffler said that in a few years, the gloves will go. And true enough, we have Microsoft Connect, and we don't even need the gloves to do gesture speak. When you look at these futures, oftentimes it's that vision that allows you to jump the S-curve of innovation, where you are really thinking beyond today, and not just to the near future, but the distant as well. And if we were to do this, we would need to look at some of this. This is a little clip from Space Odyssey 2001.
Will Mr. Travers please contact the Met Office? Will Mr. Travers please contact the Met Office?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you, Squirt?
Alright.
What are you doing?
Playing.
Where's Mummy?
Gone to shopping.
Oh, who's taking care of you?
Rachel.
May I speak to Rachel, please?
She's gone to the bathroom. Are you coming to my party tomorrow?
I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I can't.
Why not?
Well, you know, Daddy's traveling. Very sorry about it, but I just can't.
Oh.
I'm going to send you a very nice present, though.
Alright.
Anything special that you want?
Yes.
What?
A telephone.
We got lots of telephones already. Can't you think of anything else you want for your birthday? Something very special?
Yes.
What?
A bush baby.
A bush baby. Well, we'll have to see about that. Listen, sweetheart, I want you to tell Mommy something for me. Will you remember?
Yes.
Well, tell Mommy that I telephoned, okay?
Yes.
That I'll try to telephone again tomorrow. Now, will you tell her that?
Yes.
Okay, sweetheart. Now, have a nice birthday tomorrow.
All right.
And have a nice birthday party tomorrow, too, huh?
All right.
Okay, now take care and be a good girl, won't you?
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Happy birthday.
This is so sweet. And I know we say telephone in a very different way, but in 1968, this was the whole idea of Zoom calling from space, right? Just a fun fact, that was Stanley Kubrick's daughter, I think, if I'm not wrong. And if you look at Star Trek, you have the communicator, and that inspired the Razor phone in Motorola, and other things as well. So let's take a look at other experiences and products that are inspired by or TV series.
Come. Mr. Forge, I understand
If you notice,
crashed
in this video,
extensive survey of the
Captain Kurt's holding on to a particular device, right?
records.
Let's
We
see.
did try to download their
What is he holding on to?
damaged in the crash. We actually haven't been
He
able
is holding on to a...
Perhaps
Anybody?
Captain Scott could be of
What's the
use
original name? You want to type it in?
in accessing that material.
It's possible.
Yeah, but its original name? That's
Us.
right. Absolutely right. But what
Why
is
would
it?
the cartel
No,
be down?
it's actually the PADD. So it's not the Palm Pilot. Thank you for that, but trying. It's called PADD at that time. And then let me show you this little clip and from The Incredibles, the first one. And if you noticed it, Mr. Incredibles picking up something. That's a phone book, but as he throws in his trash, I want you to see what he has. Oh, what is it? If he opens it,
Hold still.
Match, Mr. Incredible.
and we can pause that over there, and you can see that that particular item is an iPad, right? And just case in point, guess who was at Pixar 2 years before the launch of the iPad? Mr. Jobs himself. And if you think about it, he was at Pixar for a moment, and I think they knew that the iPad was launching, and they did this pre-product placement. So you know product placement, you put Perrier bottles in James Bond movies, but this was like a pre-product placement. Before the launch of the iPad, they put it into the consciousness of the viewers that you can have this flat device that looks a lot like the PADD from Star Trek. And so this is actually putting the whole idea here is to use a diegesis, which means a narrative or plot, typically used in a film. And these prototypes, these pre-product placements, are actually diegetic prototypes. So historian of technology, David Kirby, termed this phrase and calls it diegetic prototypes. And as you can read faster than I can speak, the whole idea here is that they want to place these items into a narrative that makes it believable for our time. For us who are not in that space, who are not in that place, but then what it does is that it reduces the friction of accepting it, because we go, oh, that looks like a human, oh, that looks like a dad, and he's holding on to it. So there is less resistance to handling and interacting mentally or emotionally with a diegetic prototype. And so I would highly recommend his book. It's a little older, but it's still wonderful. And again, another wonderful gentleman that I've met in person who thinks that there is so much we can learn from the science that's used in Hollywood and the way we perceive it. And so moving from drawing a future with environments, set designs, as well as characters and products and technology and interactions and society, we move on now to drafting a future. As mentioned, most of the time we write the movie script first or the future script first, but then sometimes like in Minority Report, you actually design the world first. So I'm going to introduce some phrases that are used in futures foresight, and what we're going to do is see how this ties in with design thinking as well. So in foresighting and future studies, we're not just looking at one particular product that comes out, but a few strategies, scenarios, or even policies. With those, we're able to then see if your organization or yourself is ready with the right capabilities to handle all 4 or 5 or 6 scenarios that emerge. This is not a new practice. In our Prime Minister's office, the Center for Strategic Futures looks at this, and I'll also highly recommend that you go to their website and check out some of their writings and musings about the future. The futures cone is used in a very shorthand manner to describe how we need to think beyond the projected future. So pre-COVID, we would say, okay, let's do our strategic planning. And we say, okay, let's put aside 1 million or something for this project to go through. But that's the projected future, as you can see in imagining the green line going all the way back to today, the now line. So that's typical. So you say year on year, it kind of look the same. But then COVID happened, right? And actually it's not in the green, it's actually in the red area. It's very possible another pandemic can happen. And it's quite plausible that it may happen sooner than later, But what we need to do is not be surprised, or as Alvin Toffler called it, be in future shock. I think we need to prepare for it and design for it, and know that as best as we know, we will have prepared ourselves for different extreme scenarios, whether it's a growth scenario, a collapse scenario, a transformational scenario, and one that's simply more under constraint. So if you look at this, the preferred future is actually one that's in the blue circle that telescopes back to the now point and the line. And that's where you're prepared for what is probable, plausible, and possible. Now, I'm going to show you one of these methods very quickly. It's called Frame Futures Conversations by the Institute for the Future. And this is how they do it. They have different areas and all. They start with a general topic. So for example, if you wanted to do with how would you sanitize your hands or live in a COVID world with all the existing technology? Will you have robot chefs and all? And then you look at a general topic, and then you start examining what your assumptions are or what your definitions are there. And then you go and seek out experts in a particular field, whether it's food futures or robotics or future policy makers and all, and you study signals. And let me introduce you to the term signals. So signals of change are small or local innovation, whether it's a policy or technology that has the potential to disrupt the status quo. That means it must be specific and it hasn't scaled yet. It can scale in importance, in size, in geography. So if you say AI is not a signal of change, it's more like a driver already. And I'll talk more about that. See, these signals are everywhere. And as William Gibson, the author of Neuromancer, said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So if you look at some countries, they have e-citizenships like Estonia. And imagine if the whole world had e-citizenships, what would it be like? This is a localized policy. Or if you look at certain countries that have emergent technologies like if they have body augmentation or using certain chips to open doors that are embedded in your hand, that's very different, but it hasn't scaled yet and has the potential to disrupt if it does. Or even hackers that recently blackmailed an agricultural company, stole their thing, and the funny thing, not funny, but the odd thing is the Brazilian farm company actually paid the blackmail, which is the first of its kind. Would that lead to more blackmailing by hackers? We don't know, especially ones that affect the food supply chain. So if you look back at this model, you have the different parts, and the drivers, as I mentioned, are larger forces, not specific signals that are like one-off. And the company I was thinking about was the Brazilian one, I think it's called JDS. And then this is the drivers, which is very different. It's larger forces that move things. So AI could be one. If there are big political moves that bifurcates the whole planet between Russia and China and US and Europe, then that would be a larger political move. Economic, with recessions and hopefully no Great Depressions again, and other forces, they all come in together. Societal acceptance. I mean, I'll give you one. Like, for example, with our instant need for Grab car or Uber or Lyft services, and then when Grab starts charging a fine, right, for us to be late, then what happens is, as a society, we then become more attuned to what is punitive in the service industry, and we might dislike it or we may accept it. So it might be a larger social force. That's why we call it a driver. Would it change the way we think about time as a society? Legal, PDPA, and green accounting and other stuff, environmental. Stakeholder interests. So it's important that you know who your stakeholders are, because they're not, and if you're going to design your own future and not just an organization, you need to know who are your key stakeholders. For me, when I design my own future, it's my wife and my kids. It's very clear, because what happens there is my decisions impact them, and I'm no longer myself to become one. And so my wife's decision and intuitions and wisdom is much needed in my collective decision making. So that's a key stakeholder for me. So, and then with all those, I'm sure questions will arise. So, for instance, if you were to look at the banking industry, right? If you look, what happens if money is no longer used for purchasing anything in that world? Or what happens if banks no longer have physical branches? What happens if e-banks, the digital banks, take a majority of the market share? I know when they come in, they're maybe taking 3 to 4%, but what happens when they hit 50%? What happens to the incumbent banks? Or what happens if our tech cycles become even faster? And that's not unbelievable anymore. As you can already know, IBM recently said that 30% of the back-end's IT services will be replaced very soon in 5 years, as well as Microsoft, as well as Bill Gates, right? Former CEO of Microsoft, he said within 5 years, you're going to see like a huge drop in these IT jobs. And that's actually very true to number 4 here, isn't it? Not just because of the jobs themselves, but also technology cycles are hastening, as we speak. So with all these things, there might be some fears and some hopes for the future, but let me introduce you to artifacts from the future. So as a term in design futures work, these are objects or situations or little snapshots of how the future might look if there were these things. So this is a project by Max Elder about the clever kitchen and how it can kind of combine with the IoT as well as Internet of Things, as well as supply chain and all that together. What would it do? Would it be a much smarter, cleverer kitchen? What about if you had to have your microbial diversity, but it was gamified? So you can actually see what you need to eat more of instead of just going by whim, or if you had a sweet tooth, you're just going for all the sweets, but you're actually gamifying what you should be eating to increase your microbial diversity by Rebecca Chesney here. And then even in a very simple form, what happened if you had greater discounts applied to you if you pick plant-based food? Are there different incentives that go into your receipts? Would that be a different way of driving behavior or society as a whole? And there are many of these examples. You can find them as artifacts from the future. So the Indulgence Navigator, again by the Institute for the Future. And this one's funny because during COVID, we're thinking of just sitting in a plane and just eating and dining in it. But this one came out like 2012, thinking about virtual dining on a plane. And something that seems really crazy, like a mind writer or even something that communicates with our brains, seems quite sci-fi until you realize that the research in the brain to computer interfacing. So a lot of people talk about HCI, human-computer interface or interaction, but this is the brain to computer interaction, maybe closer than you think. There's this product called Stentrode by Synchron. There's this Neuralink implant that's an endovascular implant that helps people who are paralyzed, neck down, to communicate, or those who have their voice box affected by stroke or something. If you want to find out more, you can scan this and go read out more for yourself on the QR code, but you can just Google it. Stentrode is Stentrode. So it's super interesting. They passed their clinical trials already. Imagine if this is not used in medical world. but used in schools for learning? Or what happened if the whole society had this naturally embedded in our minds? I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not talking about ethics. I'm just talking about the possibility or even plausibility that these things may scale. I mean, for the longest time, we never thought we will be cyborgs, right? But you know that we can't leave our phones, and that makes us quite cyborg too, right? It's just that we can put it down a little bit, but we are so digitally attached to these things. What more with these potential implants? I hope it's not scaring any of you. So the second insight, I know the first one is how about you, more specifically, this is about us. So the stories we tell of the future affects how we design a future. So those stories cannot be just seen as, how we transfer folklore from the past to today, but really, what about the future tales that we want to talk about? Where do you want to bring yourself, your family, your company, the nation, or the planet for that matter? So in part two, I would like to talk more about how design thinking then ties in. Very quickly, you might know what persona is. It's just a summary of a group of people and their traits. So very quickly in the chat, if you can participate as well, who do you think is the persona of IKEA? This is one of my favorite examples because we all are pretty familiar with IKEA, but who do you think is the target persona for IKEA? What traits do you think they're looking for in their target audience here? Yeah, people who love DIY, absolutely. So that's right. Let me ask you all, are they married? What do you think? The persona doesn't have to be one person. Young families, yeah. How many kids? How many kids do you think there are in this family? Could be singles that benefit, but there is a specific target group. It is families and 2 to 3 kids. Yeah, it's because if you look at IKEA, if you are a parent and then you're trying to buy something, but then your kid is pulling you like, Daddy, I want to go home. And then you're like moving, and then your spouse has the other kid that's grabbing the other side again. Daddy, I want to buy the ice cream. Mommy, I want to buy the toy. And then you can't really move anywhere. What do? You leave IKEA. You walk out. So what does IKEA do? They create small land. And if you think about it, very few places have small land, right? This kind of childcare thing to put I want to say like dump your kids, but then that doesn't sound right. I think it's to place your kids there for a while, and then after a while they'll embarrass you and say, Mr. Lim, please come and collect your child. Your child's been 45 minutes, something. I don't know what they'll announce, but then you have to go get your kid, right? But at least you're afforded that 45 minutes to buy your items. And look, it's not that it's every place is kid friendly. This particular retail experience is so that you will be undistracted. So the design and the persona for this particular case study is the young parents who want to DIY, sensitive to costs and of furniture. So they are okay piecing it together because labor is the most expensive part of putting a piece of furniture together. That's like 70% of the cost. And have 2 kids that are distracting them, 2 or more. Now, if you don't fit that particular target persona, it's okay. You can still benefit, but they didn't design small land for you. And then all their eateries have all the play items. And that's all because that persona, the whole place is designed for that particular persona. And you can see small land, a version of it here, and a DIY bit. So if you look at personas, they develop empathy. So we feel for this struggling Mr. and Mrs. Lim trying to wrangle their 3 kids, while they're at IKEA. And then you're able to communicate it as a common vision. Now, these are just common present day personas with common traits and struggles. But let's talk about how personas typically used in design thinking is now used in futures thinking or design futures. So a future persona is one that requires you to imagine where that person is, that person is in the future. So for instance, if we were to design a new school or university, you cannot design for those who want to take standardized paper tests anymore, because the 6-year-old who's going to university in a couple of years is multitasking, very, very short attention span, very driven by meaning, want to prepare themselves for jobs that don't even exist yet. And so if you design for that future, it cannot be just for the existing students of today or even yesterday. A great example of this, like the School of Humanity in Dubai is the Agora School in the Netherlands, and they have classes that they don't have standardized classes. They have students that decide what class they want to take, what learning they want to do, all project-based, and the teachers are facilitators. So for instance, if I want to start a origami shop online, then as a teenager, I would learn how to do my own website design or automate that, or learn about search engine optimization if I need that still in Google. And then how do I mass produce tiny origami and look at robotics and all that. So I'll script I'll design my own learning based on what I need to pick up to start an origami shop online of tiny paper cranes or whatever. So you decide what you want to learn, how you want to learn, and what the outcomes are. So I encourage you to find out more about the School of Humanity in Dubai, as well as the Agora School. Very different. Maybe that's the future we're headed to in education. And so, as I mentioned, we and I, it's more important to think about it in first-person futures than just a general horizon scan. Let me give you an example. If you just state the facts, in the future, there will be climate change. By 2050, sea water levels will rise, It's quite dry, even though it's about flooding. But if you wrote about it in a first person and say, in the year, I will be X years old, in X year old in 2050, the two airports I use now will be at risk of flooding, and flying will be less reliable due to extreme weather. So I'll live near my kids. You see how it's very different when it's the first person? And a future me or future persona can use a template such as this, asking questions about how you imagine your family to be, what would you change, very much like the questions I asked at the beginning to you. But keep in mind that for the future, you will have future hopes and future fears, just like how you felt when you were going through the exercise just now. And remember, the future is first exists in your imagination, then in the will, and then in reality. In this quote, I'll just leave it there. The whole point here is that when we imagine these futures, or Hollywood does their science fiction films, it really just talks about the different fears or problems we might have and how we want to deal with it. So as you can see in Metropolis, it's about what is it to be human and all these issues. But in Star Wars, and May the 4th just happened, so May the 4th, force be with you in that sense. Star Wars happened and started in 77. It was at the peak of the Cold War between Russia and US, and taking the war, the analogy further into space, they talk about the anxiety of maybe a nuclear threat. Avatar, talking about how the sustainability and the environment is a big player, and how we shouldn't destroy with humanity and our progress. So all that's coming up, and Avatar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right, will probably cover similar themes of that. And so if you look at all these different hopes and fears, I want to share a series of projects with you done by different students that I've interacted with. Some I've personally taught, some I didn't. And there's some fears maybe of surveillance. Let me go there. And this project is by Sean Tan, SIT's interior design program in the past. And so what happens if everything's being surveyed? You'll be packed into your HDB units. Your timing is all controlled. And when you wake up, you're just part of the wheel. I know this is a very pristine, clean environment. Looks a lot like Space Odyssey 2001 clip that you just watched. But there's very little humanity here. You're just another mouse and you're moving along. But then if you're talking about sufficiency in the plausible scenario of another pandemic, and let's say the country doesn't go into a national lockdown, but a block-based, neighborhood-based lockdown, so that there is still some interaction, but not a lot. And this project is by Lin Ting Hui. And so imagining if there's more vertical farming happening, and you can't keep the place as clean, but then a lot of new services come out. You are wearing different kinds of masks, but you still want to play chess with your friends at the void deck of that neighborhood. But maybe some flaws in your block is a delivery point for human augmentation parts, or even delivering produce. Now, I know this looks grimy and scary, but oddly enough, in contrast to Sean's project, there's a lot more humanity and community here. A lot more dirty and less pristine, but a lot more humanity. Can you see how it works? It's these questions that are raised that's different. What about sales? Like if I want to sell more stuff, but then I'm not sure how to, let's say I'm a property developer. What about apartments that have IoT, that have refrigerators that order stuff very much like Max Elder's project? Or what if my museum, my shopping mall became more like a museum and not a place to buy stuff? Very much the same idea. And if you didn't want to go anywhere, would your apartment have everything you need? And so you only step out for the fresh air, sunshine, literally, but not to do any of these tasks, or even new forms of transportation. So I shared about all that, but I want to share with you a student's work from that I saw about sustainable food. And so this clip, I'll leave the story to be told by Mok Zijie from NUS, and his amazing work here as he explored different issues. Please take a listen. Yeah.
Hey Tim, gonna have lunch today at your place, right? See you later.
My name is Tim, and this is where I live. Singapore, the garden city of a tropical ocean. James is canoeing to my place later for lunch. He has been a friend since primary school, and I want to prepare something special for him. I don't usually invite anyone over, even if I am staying alone or working from home. But he insisted because of my special techniques from my ama I use to prepare my meals. Because of the sea, most of our vegetables grow on the roof now. My rice is made 2 blocks away, while my block focuses on leafy greens like bok choy. Auntie Amy from the gardens will share what's available with me. I will use the local produce to create my infusions of synthetic meat and fermentations. It's important to share our ingredients and meals with the community to build a healthy kampong spirit. I produce my meat in my home now. Synthetic, of course, through cells. It's not like 30 years ago. You can't buy meat made from animals anymore. You can buy the cells and devices, but we produce and prepare everything from our compound. I can't live without my cultivation device. It's like a little farm to me. You can actually see the cells grow, and it makes me very hungry, though it is hard to describe its taste. When I was younger, my parents encouraged me to innovate and explore. So when it comes to modified cells, I love to add my own infusions with other ingredients to further create taste that has never been discovered before. I was also taught from my ama the traits of fermenting and the power of mold and bacteria holds in our heritage. Some of these tools were hers, but it's apparent that tradition have intertwined with technology over time. Advancement allows devices like these to create enclosed and optimum environments so fermentation doesn't contaminate my lungs. I remember when synthetic food was introduced, back then extremely hands-free and instant. With a press of a button or when they scan our vitals, a dish was prepared instantly with no human interaction. Yes, it's foolproof, but it felt cold and distant, like we were imprisoned in our own homes, being fed like animals in a pen. I believe that a meal represents more than just sustenance for the body, but serves as a symbol of our human experiences and identity. Technology may come and take the human experience out of our lives, but the community always finds ways to bring them back. For me, the experience of creating, experimenting, exploring is truly what defines us as human beings. Welcome, James. Lunch is ready.
Maybe we can take a moment and see what you guys feel about that clip, you want to type it out a little bit, just think about it. If in 2050 we live like that, and what seems odd at first, it's quite plausible. Yeah, that's one. And we already have the technology, we have different things. And yeah, let's see what you guys think. On the way there, yeah, global warming probably enough. Yeah. I want you to see that by creating these scenarios or these filming experiences or diegetic prototypes or even artifacts from the future, whatever you call it, it's able to bring out some responses from us Will our future be exactly like this? Maybe not. But the key here is, what does it lead us to do? Are there synthetic food companies that will start working with interior designers and working with product designers to create worlds and apartments that are like that, or test it? So maybe more questions are raised, but at least we're designing our own future. So I want to end on a very quick example of designing your future communications. I know I still have a few more slides to go and a few minutes, but I just want to bring one scenario. So let's say, and this is Alvin Toffler, I think it's important that we shape the future and not just, and to ease the trauma of going there, like the video you saw, but not just to be a passive participant, rather maybe thinking of things beyond what is today's social norm or social media or typologies.
Hello everyone, I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinhua News Agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real anchor with Xinhua. The development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation.
So this was several years ago, and that was Xinhua's AI anchor. And it's a signal, like what I talked about, like a signal. What happens if we have more AI anchors? Maybe you won't be talking to me now. I'll be an AI anchor or AI lecturer. And actually right now I'm having my pina colada at a beach, front, but doing the work. So what would work look like? And I think, Facebook, Microsoft, and wearable devices, and all these different entities and factors are coming together to start thinking of ambient experiences, not just the stuff that we look at deliberately, say in social media or in a one-way manner, but what about things that surround us? So if you look at it, I'm just going very, very quickly, there may be different types of communications, embedded, multisensory, programmable, anticipatory, but look, the typologies are there for us to design and decide where we want to go later or how we want to go there. So I want to give you one little clip to maybe test how you test how you would respond to it. Yeah. So over here, I'm
Apúrate si quieres una buena calificación.
Voy lo más rápido que puedo.
¿Has pensado en correr? Es saludable y eficiente.
Seguro que no hay más trabajos disponibles. Yo estudié para ser profesora y estoy haciendo mercados.
Y además puedes quedarte con los puntos de fidelización. Eres una monje afortunada. Tienes que confiar en la aplicación. ¿Te sientes inspirada? Gracias. Chao.
¿Quién soy yo? No es lo que quiero decir. ¿Para dónde voy? No. Puedo volver a empezar. Olvídalo.
So if we pause the video right here, you'll see that your senses are highly activated. There's so many choices. There's so many things going on. Would a mixed reality world be overwhelming? How do you feel about this world? We're not sure if this is the way the world's going to be, but if we were to choose this scenario, would it be overwhelming? Would it be scary? Would it be, would I have a headache? I think I would. But what about those growing up? Maybe then it's a natural environment for them. So what we use oftentimes is a day in the life of technique, and we use templates like this to do a persona, talk about their challenges, and then plan out what their day is, in the future, not today. And so videos like that will come out, video prototypes like that will come out. And so if you go at different parts, I just want to go really quickly to the end of this slide. Sorry about it. And the point being, this is the example of a person who, let's say, wants to do live streaming, right? But has to cook for people who have this gluten challenge, or this challenge is severe allergies or something, wheat allergy. So then what would it look like? Then we will use these templates and play out a day in the life of and imagine that scenario and then start designing in factors and considerations. Are there existing technologies that are already doing this? Are there, WeChat of course is there, but then what happens if it becomes a main source of income? What would that look like? We might need 8G or something, but there are people working on different things already, faster tech bandwidth as we speak. I did this a day in a life exercise at SIT when we were designing the upcoming Punggol campus that's opening next year. It's been a while, but if you look at each panel on the glass, those were all different touch points of the day. So that was a pretty exciting time thinking about it. We were cutting magazines literally to come up with images of the day in the life of the future student at SIT. So the third insight I want to leave you with is that your collective fears and hopes will affect how you design a future. And so in conclusion, the three things in terms of methods you will need to have is to know what your desire is. Watching those videos, you probably had an emotional response and a cognitive response to it, but you need to map out what that desire is, because that will have some biases to how you write or draw out or draft your future. But in terms of insights, I want to recap on how you feel about a future affects how you design a future. Remember that, and because your feelings, there's future feelings as well. But what makes us not AI is that we have these feelings, not proxies to feelings, not representations of feelings, but actual human feelings. Then the second insight is the stories we tell of the future affects how we design a future. If our future is one of hope or one of dreariness, it does affect things. And third, and lastly, in this terms of insights, is if you look at all these examples, there are certain fears, there are certain hopes, and no one scenario is just completely dystopian or completely utopian. And that will affect how we design a future as well, individually as well as in a community. So as mentioned just now, and I want to flash her again, Barbara Marx Hubbard talked about how the future exists first in your imagination, then in the will, and then in reality. So in closing, that's the end of the presentation. But I have a quick note to say, what can you do then if you want to start playing with these futures design? So at SIT, the Singapore Institute of Technology, we have a program in design, strategy, and innovation. And this, you can scan that. I'll stay there for a moment. Or the email will be below for Joseph Moore at singaporetech.edu.sg if you want to find out more. We have a very interesting hands-on applied module that doesn't rush you through just 3 to 4 days of learning or 1 full day of learning, but we will be going through how do you do design innovation in a very practical, hands-on manner with a real client. So it will be led by Professor Cesar John Horada, TED Talk speaker, brilliant artist, scientist, engineer, designer, good friend, and inspiration to me. He's the founder of the Maker Bay Group in Hong Kong, and he has done different things as a MIT Fab Lab collaborator. And he is, as mentioned, has done a range of things in terms of the environment. So I see him as like an environmentalist activist, and he has done amazing work that challenges what we can do to help the ocean. And so this is the program. So we are going to be combining design thinking and futures design, technology, entrepreneurship, innovation, and impact management. And what it is a 12-day session, a 12-day course. And each session is not just lectures, it'll be lecture and then immediately applying it and application to a Singaporean public-facing company with 230,000 visitors annually and 200 plus employees. You can take a guess. Even though the registration has closed, what happens is you can write to Joseph Moore and we will be happy to explore putting you in this last minute, because the talk is today on the 5th and the course is starting on the 11th. But if you would like to join, please strongly consider this, because it's not just about designing today. I mean, we pick out the clothes we wear, we design something, but what about working on a real project with a real client that will have issues, challenges, and other things that you have navigate? If you want a totally hands-on experience, I would strongly recommend that. In closing, I just came back from the Association of Professional Futurists 20th anniversary in Dubai. You can see that building is called the Museum of the Future. And my friend there, Luke Tay, is a food futurist. And the interiors of that building is on the left bigger picture. So really fun for me. And I hope that if you guys want to stay in touch, add me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to chat. And I'm so glad for this opportunity again by Workforce Singapore, as well as HeadHunt, to share my passion and about design futures and how you can design it yourself. So over to you, Tammy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. John, for your time and for your very valuable sharing. So now we'll invite Raphael from WSG to share with us programs that are available for Singaporeans. Over to you, Raphael.
Okay, thank you, Tammy and Prof. John. Okay, so let me just share my screen now. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Raphael and I'm from Workforce Singapore. So today I'm here to share with all of you some of the employment support that we have for job seekers and individuals like yourself. So I have a total of 7 programs and services that I'll be sharing. And I know that I'm sitting in between you guys and lunch, so do bear with me. So what we're sharing today will be helpful for you in your future. You might not be needing it now, but when you do need it, it'll be good to know that these resources are there to help you, support you in your job search and career. So a quick introduction about Workforce Singapore. We are a statutory board under the Ministry of Manpower, and we help individuals meet their career aspirations and secure quality jobs. So how do we do it? We have a whole wide range of programs and services that can help you become more adaptable, more resilient, and it will help you become more employable as well. And that will help you in your job search and your career journey. Now, the first program that I'd like to share with you today will be our career conversion programs known as the CCPs. We have over 100 CCPs today across over 30 sectors, and it is designed to help mid-career individuals transition into new roles, take on new jobs in growing sectors that will offer you good growth and career opportunities. Now, under this scheme, we have two programs, which is the first is the Place and Train, whereby you are first hired before going for the training. So that's Place and Train. The second will be Attach and Train, whereby you are first given training and work attachment before you get the job. So there's 2 types. So you receive salary support of up to 90%, and of course, the training and the job placements are all while you're going through the program. So if at any one point in time you are interested in any of the programs that I'm sharing, you'll see that there's a QR code on the screen. You just need to pick up your handphone, you scan the QR code, it will bring you to our website, and you can find out more from them. The second program that I'll be sharing today will be the SG United Mid-Career Pathways Program. So this was regularized after the whole COVID situation, and now it's designed for mid-career individuals aged 40 and above to help them transition into new careers and to also gain meaningful industry relevant skills and experience. So what you can get out of this is actually you receive up to $3,800 per month in terms of training allowance. This is co-funded by WSG and the host organization. And if your performance is satisfactory, there is a component to be converted to be full-time, to become a full-time employee under this program. So if you are keen to find out more on where you can find jobs on the SUP, you can also apply to mycareersfuture.gov.sg. So I'll be sharing more about My Careers Future shortly. So the next program is called Career Trial. And this is for people who are restarting your careers. You have just come back from a break. You like to try something out before committing to it full-time. Then Career Trial is a program that you can look at. But first, you have to be unemployed. before you can take on this program. And you get a training allowance of $7.50 to $15 an hour for full-time positions up to 480 hours as well. And for the part-time positions, it will be 80 hours per month. Now, there is also a retention incentive for job seekers for more than 3 months and 6 months, but those are based on eligibility criteria. Now, just now I've mentioned my career's future. So if you wish to find out more about some of the jobs that are under the SGUP or CT, which is the career trial, you can go on to My Careers Future. This is a one-stop job portal, free of charge for job seekers like yourself to discover a wide range of job opportunities that are readily available in the job market. Now, it comes with a lot of cool functions like job recommendations based on your skills, input, like, okay, you say that, oh, I have marketing skills, I have design skills, I have engineering skills, for example. And after you have selected all these skills on the platform, you will actually, the AI algorithm at the back end will actually put forward some jobs that are suitable for you. And there are also filters that can easily help you look for the job that you want. So this is our online portal. We also have an offline portal, so we got you covered 360. So if you say, oh, I'm not so keen to go online, I want to talk to someone offline, face-to-face, sure, we have career matching services for you, and you can meet our career guidance team at our Careers Connect centers or E2I's centers, or you can also call us at our hotline 6883-5885, or you can walk into any of the 24 HDB SG United Jobs and Skills centers. So how will our career matching services further help you? It will help you plan your career. You get to speak to our career coaches who will provide you with one-on-one personalized advice. You get to go for workshops, seminars on how to prepare yourself for interviews, or even to brush up your CV writing skills and to make your resume even more attractive for employers. So it's a win-win for you when you take up our services. Now, so for those who say that, oh, maybe I'm not so keen to speak to a career coach now, I would like to speak to someone who is an industry professional. Okay, so we also have something for you, which is the Volunteer Career Advisors Initiative, also known as the VCA initiative. So it allows you to speak to people who are industry professionals who will provide you with insights on the skills trends, what's going on in the industries, what are their personal experience, their takeaways. So you get to know all this information that will also help you make informed career decisions on how you want to progress with your own career. Do you wish to move into a certain industry? Then you can also speak to someone from that particular industry. So we have already launched the VCA initiative for a lot of sectors. So you can scan the QR code to find out which are the sectors that are already on the program. Right now, we have the popular ones like electronics, ICT, sustainability, and so on. Lastly, I'll be sharing the SG United Jobs and Skills Placement Partners Initiative, whereby we provide job seekers with additional job search channels through private employment agencies matching services. So to qualify, you have to be either age 40 and above, unemployed for 6 months or more, or persons with disabilities. So you can sign up with one of our placement partners to tap on their expertise because they have an extensive network, and their expertise in job matching services will help you secure job placement and attachment. So if you feel that you wish to connect with us through our mailing list, our Telegram, or you wish to find out more about our website, I will leave you with our QR codes on the screen for a while. So you can scan them and you will be able to receive first-hand updates on our programs and services. So with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. I'll hand the time back to Tammy. Tammy, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael, for your time. Now, we hope that you've enjoyed today's brown bag session and would like to invite you to participate in our feedback poll. The feedback poll should be popping up on your screen anytime, so please take a few moments to share with us your observations. Thank you very much for your poll. Thank you very much for your participation. We hope that you enjoyed today's session. Our next session will be next Monday on the 8th of May, and the topic is Building Resilient Leaders at the Workplace by Mr. Adrian Chan. So please sign up early on our website, which is masterclass.sg. This brown bag series is proudly brought to you by HeadHunt in partnership with Workforce Singapore. So thank you very much. We hope that you have a wonderful weekend ahead. Okay, bye-bye.